this episode of the PA Path Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Lohenry, and we are glad you could join us as we seek to better understand the PA profession. We're delighted to introduce you to Dr. Mary Jo Bondy, who became the first PA to serve as CEO of the Physician Assistant Education Association, the only national organization serving the more than 270 accredited and developing programs throughout the United States. In this role, she leads a staff of 40 dedicated to meeting the association's vision for health for all by promoting the overall health and wellness of PA programs, their faculty, and students through faculty development, advocacy, research, and other products and services. After graduating from Duke University's PA program in 1993, she worked in many clinical settings and specialties, including in family medicine, emergency medicine, internal medicine, and orthopedics. Throughout her career, she has been a clinical preceptor for PA students, and she is an award-winning educator. Dr. Bondy has served multiple roles as a PA faculty member, including program director for the Anne Arundel Community College, University of Maryland, Baltimore PA program. She earned the Doctor of Health Education from A.T. Still University in May of 2011, and during her tenure as the AACC PA program director, she led the college's collaboration with the University of Maryland, Baltimore. And in 2014, she became the UMB Graduate School Director of Graduate Academic Programs and subsequently Assistant Dean of Graduate Academic Programs. Dr. Bondy was also a leader in innovating and expanding online education at the UMB Graduate School, establishing the Academic Innovation in Distance Education Office, and was a key member of the UMB Graduate School team that established a new PhD program in health professions education. Before coming to PAEA, she played a critical role in UMB, receiving state funding in 2019 to establish and sustain the Physician Assistant Leadership and Learning Academy, PAEA, where she served as the founding executive director. The mission of PAEA is to increase the capacity of faculty to educate future PAs for the Maryland health workforce and to advance PA education, research, and policy. Dr. Bondy has served in multiple leadership roles at the state, regional, and national levels, lending her insights and experience in health professions education, PA practice, and leadership. She is a trusted advisor and leader, and I am delighted to introduce her to you today. Well, Mary Jo, thank you again for joining us. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit about your own personal path to becoming a PA.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate the invitation, and it's great to be here. Thanks for all that you do in your leadership. My path, much like previous guests on your podcast, was not linear. I did not know about the PA profession when I began thinking about a career potentially in medicine. My parents told me, use your life well. And that means serving others, whatever that is. My dad was an engineer, aeronautical engineer, actually. I spent some time in California growing up, and my mother was a nurse. So I had great role models as far as using my life in service. So I went to college, and I bounced around a bit. I studied a little education, studied a little bit of biology. I ended up graduating with a medical technology degree. And during that last year, I studied in a cohort. And that was a tremendous learning opportunity. I really enjoyed learning at the hospital. I became a phlebotomist. I had a group of people that I did clinical rotations with, and I thrived in that environment. So after graduation, I took a job at Duke, and it's at Duke that I was introduced to the physician assistant profession and physician assistants, but again, in a very roundabout way. A physician, I used to work nights actually in the lab as a med tech, and a physician came down and needed a really complicated study done. And I was working in toxicology and chemistry. And I said I would be happy to do it for him. And he sat with me and said, you really should think about seeing patients directly and being with patients directly based on your interests. And so he allowed me to shadow, and I was able to see medicine and PAs and nursing working in tandem for the benefit of patients, and I just fell in love. So I applied to the Duke PA program. I was lucky enough to be accepted, and then my career trajectory from there has been, again, nonlinear. I've worked in 4 different specialties, and all along I've been in education. I went back to education very early, uh, volunteering to teach, precept, become a regional clinical coordinator, and then uh, full-time faculty, moving forward to academic and program director like yourself, and then ultimately assistant dean, where I really learned a lot about at University of Maryland, Baltimore, about leadership, institutional leadership, education, and organizational leadership. So that really brought me here. A desire to give back to our profession and serve our profession as we, you know, work to train the next generation of PAs.
That's wonderful. So that is quite a varied kind of path that you've taken. You mentioned the 4 specialties that you had ultimately worked in. Can we talk a little bit about that in terms of what was the attraction to the first one? What did you ultimately decide when you left that to go to the next one? Were there any kind of key learnings that you experienced that kind of led you to your various clinical paths?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, mentorship played such a role here. So as I was going through PA school, I loved every one of my rotations. They were so amazing. And it was hard to choose just one. But as I was graduating in 1993, PA positions were not as readily available in the area that I was hoping to stay, which was the Durham area. Obviously, there were a lot of positions at Duke. And so my first position was with Duke Orthopedics. And I was so lucky because my supervising physician was Dr. William T. Hardiker, who was the residency director. And so he was a tremendous role model, a tremendous teacher. I worked very, very closely with him, with the residents, and he truly treated me like a colleague from day one. It was a wonderful experience. I stayed with orthopedics for about 3 years, and then I went and did internal medicine and made a move to the coast where I practiced internal medicine and then urgent care, and really just loved being involved with the community in Wilmington and in the coast of North Carolina. And then I got a call from a preceptor who I had had as a student. And he said, Mary Jo, you always loved emergency medicine. And I've always known that you wanted to practice in emergency medicine. So you've been out there long enough. I've been watching you. Time for you to come back. And
Wow.
so it was really amazing. He offered for me to come back and interview. There was a position as a senior PA in the emergency department at PA, and um, so that was that story. And so I remained in emergency medicine until I moved to education full time. And in that role, I was able to precept consistently, students rotating through. And that was a wonderful experience to be able to be the lead coordinator for that.
And I think you just highlighted for me one of the classic arguments for precepting that we always try to tell our community partners that, you have an opportunity to get to know a wide variety of students. You can follow them in their careers. And when you have a need, when you have an opening, it's a great opportunity to reach out to somebody that was really impressive to you and recruit them back. So your workforce needs can be met really easily by giving some of your time and teaching.
Yeah, graduating from Duke, that was the one thing that we were left with, is that we had a duty of service to give back in some way. It was not dictated to us, but whether it was teaching or giving back in other ways, but precepting was something I absolutely loved to do. I loved the energy of the students. I think for me, teaching is learning twice, right? I learn more by teaching, and so it's such a wonderful opportunity to give back to our profession, to our community, and help our students along.
Yeah, and also from applicant's perspective or a student's perspective, teaching is one of the highest forms of learning as well, right? Retaining
Absolutely.
information, and
Yeah.
so that's great. Where did you pick up the leadership bug?
So again, I've been so lucky in life. It really was in my clinical practice that I was asked by, at that time, the chair of the department, who was my supervising physician, said, you are emerging as a leader on your team, and I was wondering if you'd like to take a more formal leadership role related to that. And so it was really somebody else seeing something in me that maybe at that time I didn't see in myself, and that gave me that opportunity to examine an interest in leadership. I was always involved as a student, whether it was in the state academy, or serving in some way on committee, to volunteer services. And so I was doing that work all throughout my career. But it was really that time in the emergency department where my supervising physician said, I think you should really make this a formal leadership experience. And so since then, I've been putting my hat in the ring for opportunities to grow and serve, and try to be a servant leader to our profession.
And you had alluded to your role as assistant dean at the University of Maryland Baltimore role, and that role gave you a lot of opportunity to understand a broader perspective of education. What are maybe the one or two key things that you've brought with you to PAEA from that experience?
Again, just so lucky and so grateful to be surrounded by tremendous leaders. University of Maryland Baltimore is a unique institution in that it's particularly graduate level medical, and law. And my experience at the University of Maryland, Baltimore was really an interprofessional education experience where I was able to work with faculty and leadership and deans across the university to advance the goals of the profession. So they really helped me understand the importance of alignment with institutional values and mission and vision. You hear that all the time, but making decisions based on core values, mission and vision day to day, and using them actively to respond to difficult challenges that we face at the institution leadership level was such a takeaway. And I watched my mentors and leaders do that every day, and I was honored to be part of that team. It also gave me a real interest in research and the importance of research, and advocacy, as well as innovation, and taking chances and being willing to fail forward and learn from that failure. And last, the importance of making real data informed decisions and being clear to all stakeholders how you made that decision, why you made that decision. And again, back to how it aligns with the mission and the vision of the institution. And I hope you see that I'm bringing that to PAEA, when we are working with navigating a very difficult time like the crisis that we experienced with COVID, or the social injustice that we've been experiencing, and the reckoning that we're going through with that as we work to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, let's move on to that because here you are, the first PA in history to lead the only organization that represents all the PA schools, all the PA programs, and you start in February of 2020. The pandemic had been starting overseas, but had not yet really blown up in the United States, and so I suspect that you had kind of your ideal goals and metrics that you were hoping to kind of roll into as you assimilated into the culture. But then you're hit with the pandemic first, and then the George Floyd murder, the Ahmaud Arbery murder, Breonna Taylor, all the social
Mm.
injustice and unrest in our country. And you're leading the group that prepares PA educators to deal with these things. So maybe help us understand how PAEA adjusted in that with your new leadership.
Well, I would say that that 90-day scenario that I had in my head flew out the window early in February. We
Sure.
had we had eyes on the pandemic. Certainly, there was no way to predict the global impact that it was going to have. But we, as a team, as a senior leadership team, and with in combination with the board, we're preparing early in February even to think about how this was going to affect our programs. And so there was outreach to our accreditor, and there was a recognition that we were going to have to shift online, and many of our programs would not be ready for that shift, or may wonder how to do that shift and do it well, because all of our programs really consider high quality and educational excellence as an expectation. And so we started the pivot, right? We started to create educational programming to help our programs make that shift. Outreach to our outreach to the programs, outreach to our creditor, to understand that that was going to be the way that education was going to need to go. We ourselves, as staff, went remote mid March, like many people did as well. Fortunately, we had remote work policy in place, so that was not as jarring as for some. But I will tell you that being a new leader to a group of individuals and leading and not having that time to get to know each other was somewhat challenging, but we have made it through because I have a tremendous team. Um, and then I can't tell you how important the work of the board was, and Howard Straker's leadership was, to help navigating us through the social unrest, the loss of George Floyd, and others, and trying to make sense of where we were and what was happening in the world at the same time as we were experiencing COVID. And we just really wanted to have a dialogue. We knew that people needed to convene and connect, and that's what PAEA does. So we went to town halls and open forums and had those for our faculty and for our leaders, but also for our students. And that was so powerful to hear their stories. In fact, we just had another one for the students. We had a town hall on Monday for the students, where 300 of our students came and talked about their experiences and what they're experiencing now. We continue that dialogue with them, working to create brave and safe spaces so they can talk about what they're experiencing in PA programs, what barriers or challenges they're facing, or give us ideas of what we can do better, how we can help our programs more. And they have been open and honest with us. And I just have so much appreciation for our board and for our diversity and inclusion chief, our new chief, Monica Miles, who's amazing. She joined us. She was one of my first hires at PAEA, because I recognized coming in the door before anything happened that we needed that voice at PAEA. We needed that lead. I needed that leadership on our team,
Sure.
and our DIMAC. They've been tremendous in helping us navigate this.
Yeah, and I think the let's not sell short your passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion that you've brought from your experiences at Anne Arundel and Baltimore. So obviously that was something that was near and dear to your heart. But congrats on really recognizing that need. I think as a program director, our biggest challenge with our students was just trying to be present, trying to be supportive, and navigate the different voices that were coming to the forefront based on the challenges of these police brutality, of these unnecessary and systemic racism driven murders, and then fast forward to the spring when the Asian hate uh, began in a much broader way, and so our Asian American students are really feeling it, particularly for they're very brave and kind of stand up for themselves in a way that's admirable, but deep down they're terrified for their family members, they're terrified for their grandparents, and so it's been a really rough year. Congrats on the chief diversity officer. maybe we could talk a little bit about your plans for diversity, equity, inclusion moving forward. Anything you can share with our audience at this point that PAEA is working towards?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. So, um, last year at the forum, and again, Kevin, thank you for your leadership. In the town halls that we had during the forum, we asked our members what were the critical issues that they felt faced the profession, and overwhelmingly, we heard diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And so we are in the process of doing our strategic plan right now, preparing our strategic plan. And I will tell you that diversity, equity, inclusion will be cross-cutting through everything that the association does. And Monica will serve as a point person for that, but you will see our commitment for equity and inclusion in our educational programming, in how we teach people to do assessments and write assessments, in everything that we do related to our hiring practices. You will see it in the work that all of our MACs are doing. In fact, all of our mission advancement commissions right now are working collectively on creating a webinar series to talk about how diversity, equity, and inclusion is manifest in higher education and in medical education, and particularly how it is affected if we don't do it right, if we don't use best practices in our admissions, if we don't consider it in our curriculum, if we don't consider it with our patients. And so I really look forward to the work that they're going to be presenting, probably starting in August, but it'll be a series of webinars put on from our MACs on diversity, equity, inclusion. You'll definitely see it in our publications and in our surveys. We did the rapid response surveys over the last year and a half because we really felt we needed to study PA education and learn from the experience we were having real time. But as we go back to regular surveys and provide this last rapid response survey, number 4, we are going to be referencing our diversity, equity, and inclusion toolkit and checking in with the programs and finding out where they are and what gaps there are and how we can best serve them and support them as they advance their goals related to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's fantastic. I have to tell you that we just, as a team at USC, opened up that toolkit. We're in the process. We changed our mission a year ago. We updated it. We've always had a focus on diversity, but the equity and inclusion wasn't part of the language in our mission statement or in our goals. It was just diversity, and our kind of values and goals were measured around that. Yet we felt like we could dig deeper, and so we opened the DIMAC toolkit on that and dug in as a subcommittee, and we're making recommendations to our entire team based on those tools. So I would just commend you all for that work. The team at DIMAC did a great job.
They really did. And it was obviously a labor of love, but so thoughtfully put together to really empower programs to define what they want to accomplish over time and help them get there. And I think your experience at USC is similar to mine. When I was at Anne Arundel and UMB, we had diversity as part of our mission, but we had not emphasized equity and inclusion and as much. And we are really at PAEA looking through the work that we do through diversity, equity, and inclusion very intentionally.
Yeah, I've learned from my colleagues in all the diversity work we've been doing in the last year. Diversity is, if you can focus on diversity in the realm of recruitment, best practices for student recruitment, retention, faculty recruitment, staff recruitment, that's wonderful. But if they come to an environment where people from a wide variety of perspectives don't feel welcome and part of the family, then you're totally missing the boat. And so through equity and inclusion and really embracing the variety of perspectives and lifting it up, amplifying those perspectives so that everybody has a voice and everybody feels like they have a seat at the table of related to decisions and program improvement and things like that. It's a much more excellent experience for everybody. So
Yeah, you're exactly right. The climate surveys, whether they're done at the program or the institution level, are incredibly valuable for uncovering some of those experiences that may not be obvious to faculty. We found that, and the town halls were very, very valuable as well. And then I would say it is within diverse environments that we elevate the quality of education and we get to the point of excellence.
yeah,
It is because of the diverse perspectives, experiences, ideas that we really elevate education. And so I think that should be the goal moving forward.
yeah, I agree. Well, I look forward to seeing what else comes out from PAEA related to that topic. If we can shift gears for a second, I think the applicants that might be listening are, first of all, CASPA, the centralized application service for PAs, is somewhat of an enigma, but actually, centralized application services have been around for quite a while now in all the health professions, and CASPA was one of the first. Um, what are the things that PAEA is doing related to applicants and trying to help not only applicants navigate the complexity of our rigorous and somewhat chaotic processes related to admissions? The programs all, as you know, we've talked about this at the professional level. The prerequisites are all challenging because they're not the same across all programs, and that has been a ongoing challenge for PAEA and for all the programs in terms of trying to figure out how do we do it and why should we. I think there's this Mustang mentality in our profession related to our identity as unique and wonderful programs in our own light. Yet what I've really learned recently through the lens of applicants is how incredibly challenging that is for them and expensive. It is, in some ways, it might be hurting our diversity efforts because students who come from more socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds are really having to make some difficult choices about where to invest their money, whether they can afford that many interviews if they were allowed to be invited. So I'm just curious. I know that PAEA has some work that they're doing around applicants, and I thought it'd be great to highlight that at this point.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate this. So, coming into PAEA, as you said, CASPA is kind of an enigma. I really set my sights on learning more about CASPA. What was working? What may have been challenging? What was the user experience? What may have been part of holding back um, programs related to using the tool more or using the resources more? So I spent significant amount of time with our CASPA team, who are amazing. And recently, I'm excited to say this is the first announcement of this, Kevin, if you don't mind. But
No, please.
PAEA has just hired a senior director of admissions, a PA known to our community, Donna Murray, and she's joining our team
Great.
this week, actually. So coming on board, and she will really be working with our programs much more closely in helping them understand best practices in admissions, but also really advancing our outreach to students and really learning more about what their needs, wants, and preferences are so we can inform enhancement with our liaison partners moving forward. So I'm so excited about this because we know that there are some challenges within that. But I'd also like to say that I got into the data. That I think a researcher by heart, and um, what we found through our prerequisite surveys is that there's 10 core courses that at least 85 to 87% of our programs all have. So that idea of the wide breadth of prerequisites is true, but there is a solid core. And so, really doing some work about demystifying um, prerequisites and helping our applicants navigate that is work that we intend to do, and making that path a little bit clearer and a little less foggy as they go down that road. The other thing that we're doing is we're challenging through data um, some of the practices we've held dear. And I heard you mention this when you talked to the presidents. Why are programs requiring shadowing? What are you trying to accomplish? And in all that we've learned in this time of COVID, is there a different way that we can do it? Could they meet that requirement maybe by a video like one of your presidents recommended, or another way to really convey to the programs that they understand the roles and responsibilities and the duties of a PA and are open and willing to taking on that challenge and ready to learn how to do so? So I think that that's going to be critical. The broad breadth of the number of hours that programs require of healthcare experience and what qualifies as healthcare experience, I think we need to examine that critically. And I think we have to look at some of our practices and maybe think about how we're holding some of our applicants back. Um, you know, for shadowing or healthcare experience for a student who's coming directly out of college, that requires a significant amount of social capital and financial support. And so we may be cutting off the possibility of a whole group of people who want to be PAs. The other thing that I will tell you is that we're not just looking at the present, we're looking at the future. And we are about to experience an enrollment cliff in the
Mhm.
undergraduate environment, and the demographics of our country are shifting. And we have to be mindful of that and looking to partner with other institutions like community colleges or like health systems who want to help and support people who are maybe older or in another career, kind of like I was, to come back to graduate level education and begin a path to become a PA. So we have a lot of really big aspirational goals and a lot of work to do. But through partnership, I think we can get it done. And I think we can really work diligently to help develop a health workforce that looks more like our communities.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Wow. Really a lot to unpack there, and it's all wonderful. I think there's, to your point, the prerequisite aspect and having kind of a core set of prerequisites that could be advertised. And I know our admissions team puts a lot of effort into assessing courses at hundreds of schools to ensure that they meet what our basic scientists feel like prepares students to be successful. But that data is a little sketch, to be honest. I would say I don't always buy into that mantra that students have to have that. Some of my best students in my 20 plus years of doing this have been students who really struggled academically in undergrad, but then the light clicked on when they learned about the profession, and they ended up being the top grade getter in the class. So it's not always as it seems, to your point, and related to how to be successful. And from a program perspective, trying to guess who's going to be successful is, I think, we think we're better at it than we probably are, right? Because we're good at interviewing patients. So we must, we can interview a patient in 20 minutes and come up with a life-saving diagnosis. So surely we must be able to figure out who's going to be a good PA and who isn't. And I'm not sure that that's accurate.
And we likely, with what we know about educational theory and the neuroscience related to learning and bias, we actually may be doing our students a great disservice by trying to predict um, who will be successful. And learning has changed. The learning environment and the landscape has changed, and the half life of knowledge is so short now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just understanding pedagogy and andragogy and understanding how students learn may actually make a big difference in admissions and the way we look at admissions moving forward, and who we invite to our programs to give them an opportunity to serve our communities.
Wow. Well, I'm very excited to see that work come to fruition, and congratulations on your new hire. That sounds really exciting. I would be remiss if I didn't delve into this topic, and I recognize that it's premature that the American Academy of Physician Assistants in May at their House of Delegates voted to change the name of the profession, and there's a lot to kind of consider with that, including the fact that we have to open a practice act in all the states to change that name, which is in and of itself is a bit of a large proposition, anyways. So I'm sure PAEA is contemplating this, and maybe you don't have much to share at this point because it's still so quick. But I know that our students and our applicants are asking about the impact of that on them. So, any thoughts on where you're heading with this as an organization?
We are. So, thank you for the question, and I appreciate the opportunity to address this. So, we were in the House of Delegates at the time. The PAEA staff, our advocacy staff in particular, and our board have been engaged in trying to understand the potential impact of title change, the benefits and risk of title change, both related to the association, but also to our programs, and speaking on behalf of our programs after reaching out to them to understand what their needs, wants, and preferences are. And so we continue to hold those in the forefront in our mind. And what we know is that right now, title change is a bit of a polarizing topic. And PAEA and the board has committed to representing all PAs, whether they want to self identify as a physician assistant or a physician associate, because we know that these two titles, if you will, are going to be in the lexicon at the same time for a while. And it may cause, some confusion because, as you said, states are going to have to open up their practice acts, and then programs will follow the states, right? That likely this is not going to happen on a federal level, and it's not going to happen swiftly. So PAEA is committed to working with our sister organizations, APA, NCCPA, and ARCPA, to help our programs navigate this. And one of the things that I can say is probably the most important is that until these things are changed in statute, we should not be, students, faculty, should not be self identifying as a physician associate or introducing ourselves to patients in a clinical environment as physician associates, because that could actually have a deleterious effect in advancing this work. We are really trying to work to understand some of the challenges that our programs may have in doing this. And we also recognize the variability, that it's not going to be a checklist that every program experiences the same way of making this change, because our programs are housed at so many different types of institutions. So we are working to try to understand their needs and meet them with resources. We're also looking critically at our own strategic plan and goals and prioritizing title change in that continuum, and appropriately tying our financial and capital investments along that strategic priority continuum as well. And so you may see PAEA continue to engage and ask questions and open dialogue or provide talking points of title change. But we really feel that AAPA is leading this effort, and we are playing more of a collaborative role.
Fantastic. Before we close, are there any topics that we haven't covered that you were hoping to discuss with our audience today, or to share with our audience today?
I'm just so grateful that you're doing this and trying to again demystify application and the process of getting into the profession. It is highly competitive. It remains highly competitive. And I was listening to your presidents talk about this, and it is not uncommon that people have to apply multiple times. But I would say that there is learning in each one of those opportunities. There's learning through challenge, and don't give up. Keep trying. If this is your passion, if this is where you want to be and how you want to lead and how you want to serve, keep going for it. You will find the right place for you. And to that end, the same kind of advice that you give students, Kevin, is so important and should be reiterated. That look at the programs, look at the faculty, look at the vision, look at the mission, look at the values. Make sure that they resonate with you, because that is more likely to create a safe and brave and challenging environment for which for which you can learn in, and I think that that's critical moving forward. And then, to the PAs listening out there and to others, please consider giving back. Reach out to your programs. We welcome you at PAEA to be a member of our community. Reach out to us, and we'll help you if you have an interest in being an educator. Being a clinician and being an educator, there is a continuum, and we are happy to support you along that path. And we need clinical preceptors, and our programs need clinical preceptors. So please consider giving back. We would love to have you part of this tribe. So thank you again for the opportunity, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you too. Thank you so much. We are all wishing you the very best in your new role, and I know it's only been a year and a half, but already what great work you and your team are doing to support our programs, and I look forward to the next 5 to 10 years to watching PAEA continue to grow. I'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Mary Jo Bondy, today for giving her time and talent to help us understand where the Physician Assistant Education Association is heading and what they're hoping to add into the repertoire of many different things that they offer to applicants, students, and programs in the support of their mission, Health for All. Thank you, and tune in next time